What's up, band geeks? The long-awaited bass clarinet Q&A is now in session. For some reason, October and November were supremely busy for me, like busier than they've ever been in the past. So I thought that I would be able to upload, but I didn't. I had a really high-profile gig with a famous, I'm not gonna mention on here, but it was really fun. Played Brahms 4 with a symphony, Appalachian Spring in a church somewhere, recital with one of my students, 2 recitals with my trio. I played Once Upon a Mattress in a pit orchestra, and like we had this one week where every single night of the week I had a performance or a rehearsal, and then there was a Tuesday that I didn't have anything, and then I took a gig for New York City, so I drove down on a Monday night, got there in the middle of the night, probably got there on Tuesday actually, slept for a few hours, did the rehearsal, did the concert, drove back Wednesday morning, and made it back in time for a show. When I was ready to record last time, I recorded the video and then my computer died, so this is a new computer. I'm currently downloading iMovie, so if I get this uploaded even in the next couple of days, I will be happy. So I've already filmed this once, so I might be going through things a little quicker because I've already recorded everything once and it's locked inside my computer. That won't turn on. So I guess to get things started, this is my bass clarinet. It's a Buffet Prestige. It goes down to a low C. I was contemplating getting a bass clarinet that only went down to an E flat, but I figured if I got offered a gig where I would have to play a piece that goes down to a low C, I wouldn't be able to take the gig. So it's better to be safe than sorry in these cases, and it's also like go big, go home. All my clarinets are Buffet brand. And yeah, talk a little bit about my setup. I use a Van Doren mouthpiece. It is BD5, which means Black Diamond 5. And the ligature that I have is also a Van Doren ligature. It used to be silver, but when I got it, I was playing with a pit over the summer and it completely tarnished, so now it's got this kind of sort of rainbow black thing going on, which I think is a lot cooler than just regular silver. So I play on a size 3 reed. I'm actually, these are getting soft, so I'm actually probably gonna go up and see how 3.5 sound, but on B flat clarinet I play on 4s. I just find that 3.5s work better just because the mouthpiece is bigger. I use a less steel trap embouchure when I play bass clarinet, and it helps a lot with it helps more with the high notes, I have found, but like I said, these are getting a little soft, so my high notes are sounding meh. When I bought it, I had a gig literally the next day, so I haven't been able to bring this in to get worked on yet, and there's a couple little adjustments that I would like to make for like my own personal comfort. One thing that I do recommend, if you're a small person, or you just have a short torso, this is the closé method. If you have a short torso, put it on your chair and then sit on it and you'll be able to reach your instrument. This video is coming out a lot later, so if you have not yet Googled your answers to the questions, I can give you my take on the questions. So yeah, again, really sorry that I like totally failed and am the worst. Nicole J, have any tips on reaching high notes on the bass? And a lot of these questions, I remember when I was recording this the first time, a lot of these questions, especially regarding the technique, it takes a lot of practice to get. So if you're having issues with your high, like the higher notes, the best thing you can do is to do long tones going all the way up, like starting around like a G on top of the staff. Like as high as you can go. And a lot of what I have found on the bass clarinet is just that you have to experiment with where your mouth is. So if you're a B flat clarinet player and you're moving to bass clarinet, we're used to the mouthpiece on the B flat clarinet being a lot more sort of vertical, and this is kind of like coming at us. So it might help if you slide the bell sort of like under you and tilt the mouthpiece. And for altissimo notes, it helps to use this key. You want to have that key down. Having the E flat key down like you usually would on a B flat clarinet also helps, but a lot of it is just getting used to air support, your embouchure, and the position of the mouthpiece in your mouth. If you bring more mouthpiece in, that allows the reed to vibrate a little more freely, so you might want to adjust how much mouthpiece you're taking in. And also, air support is going to be really important as well, because again, if you're moving to bass clarinet from B flat clarinet, you have a lot more tubing that your air needs to travel through, so also airspeed is going to be really significant. And I'll get more into airspeed in a couple of questions. Do you have any repair tips for fixing a bass? Short answer, no. Longer answer is why. This piece here connects here, and then it connects here, and then it connects here. And then after that, it goes all the way up. This piece moves, it connects here, and it connects here. So a lot of bass clarinet fixing tips involve me saying, go to a professional. Because there are so many things that could go wrong. Like if you adjust one thing down here, it might affect something up here. If you wrap a piece of tape just to get the connection better, it might affect something else that was okay before you made that adjustment that is now not okay before you make the adjustment. So any sort of repairs to be done on an instrument, you should really, really go see a professional. If one of these pads falls off, you can hold your clarinet like this. You can hold a lighter under the key to melt the resin in the cup, and then you can put the pad back in. Use with parental supervision, please, because you don't want your clarinet to be caught on fire, because that would be really bad. Even though it might cost some money to get it done, it's better to get it done and have it never happen again than you trying to fix it and then something else goes wrong and then it's a domino effect, and then it's after a while it's well, what did I even do? And then it ends up being more expensive by the time you take it to a professional. So I would just recommend going to a professional. How low does that bass go, and what is the brand and price? A lot of student models do go down to an E flat. This is a professional model, so it goes down to a low C. It's made of wood. It's a buffet. I am a huge buffet person. Buffet prestige for bass clarinet, definitely. As to the cost, it really, really varies. If you get one brand spanking new right out of the factory, it could be up to, you're looking at $12,000 to $13,000. I got mine for a little cheaper because it was used before it came into my possession, but the previous owners took really, really good care of it, and it's in really nice shape. And I just love old clarinets. So mine was a little bit less than $12,000, but you're looking for a buffet, especially around that price point. Jape EVG, and I'm gonna mispronounce most of these probably. Alright. In the time I've played bass clarinet, I have found that playing the throat tones well quietly is difficult because of how much air is in the sound. This especially becomes an issue when playing sustained whole notes in that register. Do you also experience this issue, and what do you do/suggest to get around it? So the first thing you want to make sure is that it's not a mechanical problem. Maybe something isn't closing that should be closing, and that's causing a lot of air resistance. Another thing that you want to do is experiment with your airspeed. So the analogy that I like to use is if you think of being on a highway where there's a lot of traffic and everyone's going really fast. That's sort of like using a lot of air that's going really fast to play at a nice, comfortable forte sound. What you want to do is sort of think about 2 or 3 cars on a highway going the same speed limit, not really fast, not speeding fast, but at a nice clip, at a pretty good clip. So you want to use fast air, just less of it, and that should give you a more focused sound. Also, do the experimenting with the mouthpiece angle and how much mouthpiece you have in your mouth, and also moving either up or down in reed size could also help, just so that because like sometimes when you have a really hard reed, there's a lot of resistance and sometimes you can get a fuzzy sound, and if you're using a reed that's too soft, that might also create a lot of air in the sound. So you need to make sure that your reed is in good condition, that it's not warped, that it's working, and that it's the appropriate strength. It sounds like it could be a mechanical problem. Sometimes with the bass clarinet, there are just some issues that you can't really fix just because of like the bore inside, and which is like, I mean, these instruments are so incredibly fickle that sometimes it's just the instrument, but you want to make sure that it's not you before you start changing things in your mouth and air support. Also, venting with some of the keys down here will help direct the air all the way through, because if you're playing an open G, your air is coming out all over here and whipping by the keys that are up, and it's going through the whole instrument. Using fast air and venting down here will help to direct the air further down the instrument. So you want to, when you're playing, direct the air so that it's going all the way through and not just ending up here, if that makes sense. Emma Blanchett Emma asks, does having small hands affect how you play? Sort of, yeah, I would say. So I have little tiny baby hands. And for the most part, the dexterity, playing things really, really fast, not an issue. Playing things really, really low or using the pinky keys start becoming an issue. And here, I'll bring you guys down for this one. My normal hand position is around here. This is my little pinky. Okay, I can reach most of these down here. When it starts getting really low, especially down here, you actually probably saw it. My entire hand has to move down to get that one, and has to move a little bit over to get this one. So having that, when your entire hand is moving down, that's not really great. Bring you guys up a little bit for this one. So most of the keys over here I can reach. We got the, this one, this one, this one. These are all fine. These are for really, really low notes. And actually, this is one of the things that I need to get adjusted, because it's really hard for me to push this down, which can be fixed and adjusted. It's difficult. But there's this key over here, this guy right here, that is the alternate fingering for here, which we don't have on B flat clarinet. Well, most B flat clarinets do not have an alternate like E flat. If I ever need to use this, like you can see, this is pushed down. My hand is not comfortable here, and it's too small. So I wish I had longer fingers. Unfortunately, that's what I was born with. But I would say for the most part, even if you have a bass clarinet that goes down to a low E flat as opposed to a C, you shouldn't experience too much difficulty playing them. But unfortunately, having small hands does play into effect when you have to stretch to reach all of the pinky keys. Having small hands, I mean, you will be a little bit more stretched out, but the more like technique exercises that you do so that you find a comfortable hand position, the better you'll be off in the long run. Will a bass clarinet be the same with a tenor sax reed? No, just buy bass clarinet reeds. Okay, Irvin Jr. asks, are the range and fingering the same from the normal soprano clarinet? So, yeah, about. Obviously, the bass clarinet, if you finger like an open G, that's going to be like playing a low G on bass. No, that's going to, if you play an open G, so no fingers, on bass clarinet, it's going to sound like you're playing a low G on a B flat clarinet. So this essentially plays an octave lower than B flat clarinet. So if you play this C on a B flat clarinet, when you play this C on a bass clarinet, same fingering, same note on the page, it's going to sound an octave lower. And then when you play low C, it's going to be essentially 2 octaves lower than that note. The range is goes a little further down, well, a lot further down, an octave plus down. And with high notes, it's, comparable. I can get up to a high C above the staff on this instrument, so 5 ledger lines above the staff. I can do that on this instrument, but it's going to sound like a high C, like thumb and register key on the B-flat clarinet. And the fingerings are all the same, except for like where some of the lower keys come into effect, but that's not going to be the same anyway because B-flat clarinet only has these 4, bass clarinet has these, plus some keys in the back if you have the lower notes. All right, Tynan. Tynan always comments. He's great. You're great. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but last name is Nguyen. Thanks for being a subscriber. All right. Do you think the repertoire for bass clarinet, if sufficient, is... Oh, okay. Do you think the repertoire for bass clarinet is sufficient such that one can start with bass clarinet and never have to actually learn or play the regular B-flat clarinet? Oh, yes and no. A lot of modern clarinet pieces are very technically challenging. So if someone starts on bass clarinet, they're not going to be able to play those pieces until they have many years of mastering the instrument under their belt before they even attempt to play a more modern bass clarinet because there are so many extended techniques like slap tonguing, flutter tonguing, and multiphonics, stuff like that. There are like easier pieces, like Bozza wrote a really great piece that doesn't have any extended techniques, that only goes down to a low E flat. Like the repertoire is getting more large, but if you have the option of learning B flat clarinet, I would definitely learn that alongside of bass clarinet, just because there's not a whole lot written specifically for bass clarinet, and a lot of the things that are written for bass clarinet are cello transcriptions. And it's really helpful if you play in a wind band where you're playing bass clarinet, where there's like an actual bass clarinet part written out, so like that's sufficient enough. When you get to orchestra, most pieces that orchestras do play don't actually require a bass clarinet. Like anything written by Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, no bass clarinet. It's not until you get to some Tchaikovsky pieces, Mahler, Stravinsky, Shostakovich, when you start getting more sort of like modern composers after the classical era, that's when the bass clarinet starts to enter the orchestral repertoire. Are there any modern composers or compositions that you know featuring the bass clarinet? I do. There is actually one of my favorite pieces of all time is a klezmer piece called The Dreams and Prayers of Isaac the Blind by Golubov, or Golubov, however you want to pronounce it. I will leave a link to that below. The performance that I'm thinking of, David Krakauer plays it, and he's an excellent B-flat and bass clarinet player. He specializes in klezmer music, and it's just like, it's such a crazy piece of music, and it's really enjoyable to listen to, and it is really Jewish. It is the most badass Jewish music I have ever heard in my whole life, and I will leave that link below because I think that everyone should hear it. It features some very, very high notes on the bass clarinet as well. So I will leave that in the link in the description in the doobly-doo down below. Oh, and he says, by the way, the album very much reminds me of Steve Reich. Thank you so much for listening. And as you all know, I play bass clarinet and B-flat clarinet in a sextet, and we have an album, which will be down in the description below as well. XX Wood Wind XX B-flat says, and I loved this question, first of all, I just figured out my spot for wind ensemble, and it's right next to the bassoons. Should I let them take control over the low reed sound, or should my section, bass clarinet, take control? In my younger years, I would have been like, yeah, bass clarinet, take control, get that extra reedy sound. Yeah, bass clarinet, take over. However, now that I have matured into a more distinguished, elegant musician, that's not what I would recommend. Play as if you were one instrument. So a classoon, a bass classoon, or a bonnet. Blending your sounds will make it sound extra badass, because if you have a lot of bass clarinet sound, then you lose the extra reedy sounds that bassoons can add. And if you play with a really heavy bassoon part and you sort of come away on the bass clarinet part, you miss that, like, the bass clarinet plus bassoon sound. But it's best to work together to find a sound between you guys. And the best way to do that is to have a sectional where you rehearse just with the bassoons and bass clarinets together. That way you guys can match intonation, you guys can match articulation. The best way to get you guys to play together is to just match everything, because when intonation matches and when articulation matches, your sound will be able to be heard above everything. And any tips to play in unison with the bassoons? Intonation all the way. If you need to, come back a little bit in dynamic to be able to play with a good sound in tune, do that. Instead of playing as loud as you can, blastissimo, playing out of tune, playing really flat, then it'll just sound like a big muddy, wall of sound that is just like blasting the audience. So you don't want that. You want a nice loud sound. And the reason why I like playing bass clarinet so much is because it's the closest that I will ever get to playing a brass instrument. So like those really low resonant notes are actually pretty easy to get out. It's just a matter of being able to play in tune. That's what I have for Clarinet Q A, Bass Clarinet Q A, the first ever on this channel. If you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I promise you I will get back to answering them either in the comment section, or I'll do another video if I think that another video needs to be done, a full video. I do have some educational content coming out. I've got a whole bunch of ideas that I'm just trying to get out, and a bunch of them I pre-recorded, but they're lost in my computer that won't turn on. And I finally have my recital from November and a couple of other pieces that I do want to upload as well for you. So I'll be doing those probably on Thursdays, and then educational stuff more on the weekends, depending on the housing situation and if I'm the only one home, because I can't film when I'm around people. It gives me anxiety, which I don't know why. Also, when I turn on the camera, I get anxiety, so it takes me a couple minutes of just talking to myself before I'm actually comfortable in front of the camera by myself. I don't know. I'm a crazy person. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the Bass Clarinet Q A. Again, I'm sorry it took me so long to get it out, but yeah, let me know if any of my tips helped, or if you found other ways to do it in the meantime. But yeah, thank you all again so much for commenting, for supporting my channel, for subscribing, for listening to my album, and all that stuff. And until next time, which won't be as long as it took me to get this video out, until next time, I will see you. Go practice.